Welcome to another episode of TSW. The world of AI is changing so fast, and it's so hard to keep track of what is happening and what are the new things. And one of the new things that is there is agentic AI. I know there are a lot of announcements, a lot of developments, a lot of Twitter threads, a lot of LinkedIn posts, a lot of community posts at different forums, right? But at the moment, it's so new. I don't really understand it, to be very honest. And this is why we have someone who's gonna break it down for us and make us understand why it is so crucial at the moment, how it evolves from the kind of AI developments we have seen in the past. So without further ado, let's get on to the conversation. I hope you would find it very insightful. John, thank you for joining us. And we are seeing an explosion of interest in AI across all sectors. From your vantage point, how do you characterize the current state of AI adoption, the global financial industry, and other categories which you see? What are the most significant shifts you are seeing at the moment?
A great question. Thank you for that, and it's great to be here. So I think we work with, as Acuity, we work with 650 banks, asset managers, and private markets firms around the world. And so we've got a really good visibility as to what people are doing today. I think all of our clients are trialing, at least trialing AI in some way. They're often at quite early stages. They're often got a generative AI solution that they're trialing out. They might have introduced AI into a few workflows. They're more advanced. Sometimes maybe the largest global banks or largest global asset managers or private markets firms, they are a bit further down the road. They've got multiple tools, multiple use cases, some of which are highly proven, and they're now scaling up. But everyone's on this journey. They're each trialing things at different times. They're trying to integrate in their business. They're trying to learn. Lots of trials and learning happening, and see where the business case is, understand how the sort of change management and the people and the roles will change, and then start to scale. I think it's undoubtedly the case that there's a really strong business case for AI. You can see where the flagship use cases are, that this is really impacting front, middle, and back office. It's creating revenue as well as managing cost. And so clearly there is a big case here, but exactly where it is and what's mature and what's not, I think people are still learning. Thank you. That was such a great insight. And so what happens is, like, the AI disruption happened, say, a couple of years ago, or just a year or so. Right now, we are seeing a fast development within AI space. So now we are seeing that there's something called agentic AI. To be very honest, I don't understand it very well. And for listeners and people who are watching our content, it will be great if you can just, break it down. What is agentic AI truly means? What does it do? And how is it different from generative AI or the other kind of AIs that exist? And why it is gaining so much of traction, why people are talking about it, and in the context of your domain where you are operating at the moment, how this thing could be a very big or small, or is just a hype? What do you make out of it? Very good. I'm very happy to do that. So, generative AI sort of hit the big time, hit the news about 2.5 years ago now, and it's had a big impact, right? It was a big wave of improvements and made AI sort of available to the masses. Everybody could play with it. Everybody could use it. Everybody could see how it might have real potential. But generative AI, essentially, you ask a question, called a prompt, and you go back and answer. And the answer could be very helpful. Typically, we've found that in the sorts of tasks that generative AI supports, the productivity improvement is between 15 and 30%. So that's very useful. It makes a difference. But there are challenges around generative AI. Generative AI, some of the challenges it makes some stuff up. If it doesn't always know, it's what's called hallucination. It will give you the answer, most likely answer, but not necessarily the correct answer. And that's a challenge, particularly in financial services. Also, it doesn't always help you by providing all the sources where that information has come from. It's getting better in that regards. But not having that ability to check back, again, is critical for a regulated industry like a bank, asset manager, private markets firm. So there were sort of challenges. But generative AI, the way I like to think of it is, it's a digital worker in which you ask a question and you get an output. And that's one type of digital worker. The difference between generative AI and agentic AI is with agentic AI, we actually train up multiple digital workers. We refer to them as AI agents. With generative AI, there's one type of digital worker, in a way. It's a digital worker that creates an output from the question. With agentic AI, there's a range of digital workers, a range of AI agents, and each one is highly specialized. So you'll have AI agents that are specialized at extracting data and pulling together data from maybe complex sources. You have other agents that are really good at analyzing data, maybe with particular domain expertise. There'll be other agents that are good at producing an output, maybe in PowerPoint, Excel, or Word. Other agents will do maybe the job of a finance planner or a finance analyst, or maybe someone in accounts payable. So you can train up these AI agents to be digital workers with a high degree of specialism, just like in a workforce today, we have different departments and different skills, and these people are highly specialist. The AI agents can also be highly specialist. And just like in an organization today, a complex output is created by a team, not an individual, a team of people with different skills who come together. In agentic AI, we create the output with a team of AI agents, all bringing different specialisms, and then they produce an output. Now, that allows us to produce something that's far more end-to-end, an end-to-end process. It allows us to do something that's much higher levels of efficiency gained. You could be 60, 80, 90% efficiency gains rather than the 15 to 30 with generative AI. And actually, it allows us to do an entire workflow. So that ability to do a much broader set of tasks, deeper, better, is really important. The other aspect about agentic AI is one of those roles that you define can be a quality assurance AI agent. And you actually can have multiple quality assurance AI agents. And between them, they can make sure that there is no hallucination. There is no data that's made up. And therefore, you overcome the issue that generative AI has with making up some of the content. And the problem was, maybe only 5 or 10% was made up, but you'd no idea which 5 or 10% was made up. And if you're a bank, that was a problem. Now, if you have a quality assurance AI agent that's checking the work and then is highlighting anything that is unsure, anything that needs to be checked, then that means that the person, there's always a human in the loop, can then check what needs checking. So we're not saying that there's suddenly no people needed in this process. There will always be people. For us, there will always be humans in this process. But what we're saying is this team of AI agents can take the heavy lifting out of an arduous process and allow the person to do the more interesting value-added work. And so it takes, if generative AI brought one sort of power in the past, agentic AI brings a range of superpowers, and collectively they can achieve a lot more. And I hope that helps to sort of set the context.
Yeah, so how can we trust all these tech companies? We know that it's very hard to trust these tech companies with our data. So now with agentic AI, I understand that there's a lot of data training and it's really hyper-personalized, right? So how does these platforms make sure that these are very non-intrusive? How they're non-intrusive and still they're able to deliver the tasks that a person is asking? Because don't you think, just asking way too much information about yourself and the ownership of it, we have seen how difficult it has been for the companies to safeguard the data of people, like there have been breaches and also misuse of that data by the company itself to say targeted advertisements and profiling of say a cohort of people. So how do you see the privacy and the intrusive part?
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. And I suppose my answer to that is, I suppose, just because you can do something, it doesn't mean that you should. So we have 6,500 analysts today in Acuity who focus with great domain expertise on our 650 clients. Now, but they work typically behind the client's firewall. So they're working on the client side, which means they have access to the data the client has in their environment. So it's not that we're scraping data or obtaining data that hasn't been given, if you like, with consent, what we're doing is we're using a range of data sources that our client has got permission for. And they could be bought data, like a Bloomberg or a CapIQ or a FactSet, or they could be data they've collected just for themselves. It's quite unique to them from their interactions with their customers, but with permission. Or it could be the information on the web or sitting on their SharePoints from meeting notes. So it could be quite a wide range of data that gets used by these AI agents, but the data, if you like, that the organization has decided it has permission for. Now, one of the things we say is just that with any AI, but particularly with agentic AI, you need to be very clear on your governance, right? What are your design controls? How are you making sure you can audit the models and the answers? How do you escalate if something goes wrong? And you need to put all that in place early. If you put it in early and have clear policies, and we have a very clear set of AI guidelines that we use, then you'll be fine. And we've got ethics committees and things like that to make sure that we stay in line with our values. If you don't do that early, you'll pay for it later. You'll pay for it in risk, you'll pay for it in compliance, you'll pay for it in your reputation, right? This is an area where the agentic AI gives you a level of capability that is very, very powerful. And that's why we believe in it so much. But that doesn't take away the need to have clear sort of the rules that you set yourself. The guardrails are very important. And one of the things that we say is that no financial service organization in the future will let these AI agents roam around their organization without control, right? They will set clear guardrails and they will give them a workflow to achieve. And that workflow could be, produce me a credit risk assessment for a company that I'm thinking of lending to. But it will be quite a defined workflow, quite a complex workflow, but quite a defined workflow. And the agents will only have access to the data that we typically have for that process, but they would do what it would have taken a week to do in a matter of hours, or what would have taken hours to do in a matter of minutes. So I don't think it means that we have to drop our standards in how we use data. I think actually it means we need to raise our standards, but I think it means we need to consider it clearly up front.
You earlier mentioned that, agentic AI is like, getting a superpower or so, right? So think of a normal person who is doing a corporate job or doing some sort of a white collar or maybe blue collar job, and he wants to use agentic AI. So help me understand like what kind of productivity enhancements like he will see or experience he or she experience in their day-to-day life. If say for instance I am someone like who's a journalist, like if I start implementing agent AI, so what kind of what aspects of my life would be different, or how much of time I'll be saving? Like I just want to understand from productivity, like what kind of when we say superpowers, then what kind of superpowers it will get?
Okay, so a great question. I mean, my world is in the sort of the banking, asset management, private markets space. So let me just take a typical example, right, where you're in a private markets PE firm, and then an opportunity comes in to buy a company, to bid for a company. It will, it's a Wednesday afternoon, and the manager will pull everybody together and say, "Look, guys, this is the most important deal we've ever got to win, right? We've got to win this mandate." And all the analysts sort of cancel their weekend plans and start to work a sort of 80-hour week. Even the managers are working an 8-hour week. And the reason they're doing that is because they're spending most of that time pulling data together about the company that's being considered for this mandate, and then pulling data together for like 5 other companies that look like the first one. And then for each of them, they're creating a set of profiles, they're creating compares about how they're trading these different companies. They're doing some analysis as to which one's got the least risky supply chain, or the strongest leadership team. But they're doing a set of deep analysis on these different opportunities, and then ultimately they're creating maybe a valuation, and they're doing some due diligence. Now they may have a week to get all that together. Today, in that 80-hour week where they sort of miss out on their family time, they eat pizza in the office and they fall asleep on the conference room table. Today, most of that time is going on pulling data, right? It's about getting data into a nice format, getting it comparable, having metrics that you can compare, doing projections, making it look nice in PowerPoint. And most of that time is in that space. Actually, probably less than a third of that time is spent doing the value add, right? Less than a third of the time is doing what they should be doing, which is, in my example, given the current economic climate, they should be considering these 5 companies, the one where there is a mandate and the 4 that they're comparing against. They should be looking at the supply chain of each and saying, who's got the biggest risk in their supply chain given the economic uncertainty around global trade? And who could actually change their trade and supply chain dynamics easiest if that risk gets higher, right? So therefore, who can adapt? And they're the sorts of questions they should be asking. But today, they're so busy on getting that core report together, they haven't got time. So what this agentic AI would do is, it would take those 50 hours of that ET, where they're doing all that prep work, all the heavy lifting, and make that 5. Or max, 10 maybe, right? And then what does that mean? Well, 80 hours can become a 40-hour week, but then they can actually spend, instead of spending 20 or 30 hours doing the value add, they could spend 30 or 40 hours doing the value add, right? So they can go deeper into the analysis. They could do more deals if they want to. I don't think they'll have fewer people. I've seen no evidence that they'll have fewer people. What I've seen is that they will do better quality work. The people themselves will be happier because they'll actually be doing what they wanted to join the firm for. The insight, they're getting specialists at their industry and thinking strategically. That's where they'll spend their time, and they won't be changing spreadsheets to get numbers to mean the same thing when you're looking across multiple companies, or trying to get a table of data out of a PDF file that into format that you can use, right? Because the AI agents will be doing that. So the average knowledge worker in 2 years' time, I think, will have 10 agents working for them, AI agents. But the 10 AI agents will be doing all the work they don't want to do today, and they will be doing the work that they do want to do today.
If AI is able to do so and lots of things, like for instance, a smallish company tries to, like, while as an entrepreneur or someone who's building out something, these AI tools sounds very great, like if you will see. But then, if you look at the people who are like employed, like the IT sector, and people who are like deeply involved, like who have been right now. So for instance, this disruption is happening at the moment, but it is the kind of disruption is happening, it's not even at the moment. So that is why we don't see a lot of changes, or we are not experiencing it at the first hand. Maybe I'm saying it because I'm sitting in India and I don't see that much of impact. But I see, like, I see a lot of layoffs happening, and I wonder, like, because now you have a workforce that has become more or less redundant, and the young kids who are in, say, who are in colleges right now, who are studying, and how should they prepare for the jobs of the tomorrow and today, for instance, considering wherever the disruption has happened.
Yeah, I suppose, first of all, I would say that when you look at any major wave of automation that's happened in history, none of them so far have led to fewer people in jobs, right? So whether it was the Industrial Revolution and the automation in factories, or whether it's been previous rounds of sort of white collar automation and electronic automation, nothing yet has resulted in fewer people in employment. And I don't think this will be I'm confident this is not going to be any different, right? We're not going to have half as many people working in 20 years' time because of what we've developed here, always developing. What will happen is jobs will change. I mean, just like the introduction of the internet changed a huge amount about how we do business today, AI is having a similar but probably potentially even greater impact on how we work than the introduction of the internet had. But it didn't change overnight when the internet came in. Some things move faster than others, and a lot's changed over a period of a decade or so. But actually, it didn't change overnight, and there was time for people to start to adapt. Now, what I'm seeing is my oldest son is at university and he's studying engineering. He's in his second year, but he's already doing courses on data science and machine learning. And when I talk to him, it may be my career has been spent in AI, but I don't often talk to him about AI, but nevertheless, he uses it every day, right? So he uses it because as a 20-year-old, that's what 20-year-olds do now, right? They're native with data and they're native with AI. And they are coming out of university, even if it's an engineering degree, with a good level of knowledge around data science. And that will only continue. There won't be a course in 5 years' time that doesn't have a module on data science and AI. And so the crop of university graduates coming through now actually bring with them much more of a data and AI native mindset. And they will adapt very quickly into the way that roles will change. And the way that we work at the moment, we're putting a little bit of AI into different parts of the way we work. But in the future, we'll design AI native processes. We'll design the way we work with AI in mind, not bring AI in afterwards as an afterthought. And our next generation of workers will actually come through and just adopt this sort of approach. They will expect that the heavy lifting is going to be done by AI agents, agentic AI, and they will expect that they're doing the interesting stuff that they were educated to do. And so, yes, we need to think about how roles will change. We need to think about what the graduate intake will do in the future, because the junior bankers won't be doing what the junior bankers did in the past. But actually, they will learn quicker, they will come in stronger. And we need to think about how we make everybody more data comfortable, be able to produce insight from data, and to be able to use AI tools. We don't need to make people into data scientists, everyone. That will be the minority. We need to make everybody to be comfortable with it. So they need to be able to write a prompt, not to be able to explain how generative AI works. Or they need to be able to use the agents that will be doing this work for them. They don't need to be able to create them. So I think that the roles will adapt. What we look for and train people at university will change. But I see it as being a sort of a very positive journey.
One of the things which always stands out when we speak of AI is that, it should be like, hyper personalized, and one size fit all cannot work, right? And in India, we have seen like we are trying to build our own LLMs and everything, right? And it's very hard to get local nuance. We have seen the disruption that, say, DeepSeek did, or other platforms, generative AIs did. But my personal observation has been that, these AIs are good for their local market, but not really doing this, like not even balancing it out. Say, if as a user in India will not have the same experience, something originating from the other part of the world or the other, and the vice versa. So, do you think, building, very say, a hyper local AI will be the go-to thing? Because, say, if I want to build a company, right, for instance, my own platform is there, right, and I want AI that is supposed to work just within my thresholds and the limit boundaries, right? Metaphorical boundaries, right? And I don't want to use, I might use the codes from, say, OpenAI and everything, but I don't want it to like use OpenAI's ChatGPT, for instance. I want to build my own version of it and use it for my own purpose, right? So do you think that will be like, that is going to happen sooner or later?
I do, and I completely agree with you. It sometimes amuses me if you use any of the large language models and you ask them to create an output, many of them will respond with the word horizon somewhere in the response, much more often than you or I would ever use in reality.
Okay.
And that's because many of them were actually trained in South Africa, where people talk about seeing over the horizon because the planes are longer, right? And so actually, sometimes even as a Brit, the language the large language models give is not even quite right for our market because it's where the models were trained. But my point I was saying earlier was that generative AI, the large language models, they are generalists, really. The generalists that surprised us in how good they were at writing a response to a prompt, but they're still a generalist. The point of agentic AI is that we're training specialists. So we've trained a set of AI agents in Acuity that are highly specialized at financial services tasks. They can, for instance, there's one type of agent that just is a real specialist at looking at balance sheet, cash flow, P&Ls, and extracting information out that wouldn't be obvious to a generalist, right? It's only we only know it because we've spent, with thousands of people spending the last couple of decades doing this sort of work. Now, in the same way, if you're in the India market, then you'd adapt these agents to be specialist on your market, right? They would understand the difference between different parts of the country, for instance, the way that people buy products differently, that maybe the way that things are priced or sourced. So you can actually, agentic AI gives you this opportunity now to do this high level of personalization. And it can be personalizing for the way that you work or your environment. It could be personalizing for the way that your customers want to receive your services. But I suppose one of the big benefits of agentic AI is its ability to have a high level of personalization and specialism. So I think this is what we'll see is in case of India-based organizations demonstrating their domain expertise, which for them may be geographical, in the way they create these agents. And that's something that we're thinking about because we're a global organization. The majority of our employees are based out of India, but we serve the world. So we're having to think about how do we serve different industries, different markets with this high level of specialism that is inherent in the expertise that our people have.